hard to turn that music down once it gets going. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to WNHH Radio's Dateline New Haven. I'm your host, Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines on the stories that make New Haven tick. Mayor Toni Harp keeps making New Haven tick morning and night. She's here in the WNHH studio for her weekly Mayor Monday checkup on what she and we are up to in the Elm City. Welcome, Mayor Harp. Nice to see you.
Well, thank you very much, Paul. It's great to be here.
It's warmed up, even if it's overcast.
Yeah, we noticed that even though it was kind of chilly, it's still about 50 degrees, right?
Yep. It's supposed to get high 60s to this afternoon.
Oh, my goodness.
If my phone tells the truth.
It's going to be steamy.
Then it's going to go back colder again.
Oh, my goodness.
We're going to get the summer, though.
It's happening.
Right. And what else is happening is that if you have a question for the mayor, feel free to pop it to us via Facebook Live. You might be watching it there now, but if you're not, please go to the New Haven Independent Facebook page. You'll see the video right there and you can post. Thanks to Gateway Community College, Birch and Moses PC for providing financial support for today's program. So Mayor Toni Harp, you had a pretty interesting Sunday. Interesting stuff going on around town.
Yeah. It was really interesting, actually.
So you know what I'm going to ask, but tell me which ones you were most interested in.
Well, going to Next Haven was really very fascinating.
Let's remind people what Next Haven is.
Okay, go ahead.
Or you can either way.
Well,
it's that artist community.
It's an artist community that was started by Titus Kaffar.
Our superstar.
And it's on Munson Street in an old electric light facility. And they're building an opportunity for artists who mostly want to do postgraduate work, but not necessarily just that, to work together on innovative art, avant-garde art, I'd almost call it.
Which I would not call his. Would you call his art, Titus's art, avant-garde? I mean, it definitely stretched boundaries, but, a lot of it's really representational. He has a lot of racial themes he deals with in his artwork in very original ways.
Yeah, I think, well, maybe avant-garde is the wrong word, but it's sort of like
might be
art
the right
with
word.
a message.
I want to call that avant-garde, yeah.
Yeah, his is more of a message art.
It's really great. And he's a big-time international star now. You see he works with Spike Lee. He has a big new exhibit. I know, why don't I always call that first? He has a big exhibit just opened at MoMA.
Yeah.
And he has a profile coming out in the New York Times. Has it come out yet?
I don't know, but he's amazing.
Yeah,
and he does so much for
you too, Patricia.
Yeah, he does so much for artists who are up and coming, and I think that's really one of the most amazing things. And his vision for artists as business people is it's amazing. But what I enjoyed the most was going to the various studios of the artists who are in residence.
Are they there already?
They're there already, and that was the most.
Oh, I thought it wasn't finished yet.
It's not.
Oh, but they still got the artists moving in.
Well, the part the part where they are is finished. The part that the sort of gallery and the performance space and the what I would call the living residential space is not completed.
And Titus Kaffar just won a MacArthur Genius Grant, and he decided to put down roots in New Haven. He came here for art school, fell in love with the city. Guy could be living anywhere in the world right now. He'd be, welcomed as a superstar in New York or abroad. He loves New Haven, and part of what he's doing here is this project to bring an artist community, including education for kids, to Dixwell neighborhood.
Right, and one of the first things that he said was that he said that there are places in America where developers bring artists to develop these communities. He says it happens automatically in New Haven.
Right, and the other places, they bring in the artists cheap and then kick them out when they've made the place more valuable. And I don't feel sorry for the artists when that happens, because that's the understanding.
Yeah, well,
The way my mind got changed that years ago, all these artists were living basically for almost free on Lower Church Street.
Mm-hmm.
And they were really mad at me. One of them was really mad. They're getting evicted, so they want me to write about it. And it turned out the person hadn't paid a rent check in a year. And I remember talking to the landlord. He said, do you think, I do pay for the building. Do you think the guy should be allowed to be here for free all the time? Artists do get a sense of entitlement sometimes. But I think what Titus is doing differently here, this is not a gentrification project. He's building on vacant area. Although I guess did they take one home for that?
I don't know if they did or not. I know that there is a plot right behind
Where they
the
want to
vacant
expand it.
building where they're building the living units.
Yeah.
So.
But in any case, this is to be permanently for art. It's going to be a permanent part of that neighborhood, not to be transferred later to like luxury condos.
No, it's and the way that it's built is that it is built around the art aspect of the building. So you have the art. I know there's a word for this, but the places where they actually produce their art is a part of the whole facility. So.
Cool. And again, that's a block next door, pretty much the Elephant in the Room boxing gym, across from Prescott Bush Senior Housing,
right.
And it's a block away from, if it's ever going to happen, that big Munson Street on vacant industrial land project of Hunter's new apartments. I guess that got delayed, but now it's back on track or something. There was a problem with the partners.
Right. I think that's going to move forward. It's the Doug Gray, I guess.
Yeah.
So,
Did they fix their problem, or?
I believe so. Yeah.
And that had nothing to do with New Haven, right? That had to do with him and his partner?
Yeah, I think it had more to do with whether or not they agreed upon how to move forward.
All right, but that was only part of what you did yesterday. So you toured the place yesterday. You found that people are already living there. You liked the art.
No, they're not living there. They're doing their work there.
Doing the work there. Okay, okay. What was the occasion of you going over there?
I think they actually had an open house.
Oh.
And so they had invited people to come in and to see the progress that they made and to look at the work of the artists there. Now, the interesting thing that I think is phenomenal about Titus Kaphar is that because, as you point out, he's world renowned. Whenever galleries want to show his work, he always brings them there to Next Haven.
Oh.
And his work is in the back
so his
of all
work's
the
there
studios,
too.
some of his work. And so in order for the folks to negotiate with him, they have to walk through and see the art of other people. So
very clever.
He is doing what he can to promote other artists.
Sly Titus. I noticed some of his pieces now are up at the Yale Art Gallery. I was there recently.
Oh, okay.
I was looked at some piece I really liked, and I looked at who did it. And I said, wow, that's Titus Kaphar.
Yeah.
From New Haven. So that wasn't the only thing you did Sunday. You also went to church.
I went to a United Church on the Green, and they had a Guns to Plowshares program, and it was very interesting because they actually were taking some guns that had been taken off of the streets through our gun buyback program, and they were molding them right out in front of the church. And
with a forge.
With a forge and with a hammer. And
yeah, we got a video of that on the Independent today. A woman who lost her son to gun violence years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It was sort of the spiritual. I love it. I love the idea when you're thinking of ideas like turning guns into tools and changing the way we think of our society, and doing such a practical way where you're actually working at a forge and you're hitting the piece of metal. I mean, there's something seems transformational about that.
No, I think it is, and especially for those people who've lost people, to be able to hit the gun and turn it into something positive is just an amazing experience.
So the two people here last night they have a book about this project they do around the country. Mike Martin and Shane Caborn, the authors of Beating Guns: Hope for People Weary of Violence. I was talking to my reporter Noah Kim. We have an article about today in the Independent. And we're saying, what was different about this? Because we had a big press conference 2 weeks ago about how in New Haven they're already doing a lot of this, and the tools are going to go to the Common Ground School. So what was different last night was the religious aspect. That these people were making a case that in America, a lot of evangelical Christianity has defined guns as a positive. That, NRA becomes the gospel. And they were trying to make a case that, in fact, the power of Christian values is not about guns, but it's about having fewer guns and less violence. And how did that strike you as a Christian sitting there?
I thought they were absolutely right. Some of the things that I was really surprised. They showed a picture of a church. Actually, I think it might even be in Connecticut, right off of the Colt factory, of a cross, and then around the cross where you would normally see something that would represent, spirituality, like those types of figures, they were pictures of guns.
Really?
And they showed a number of they showed a Bible, and they said that it was the largest Bible Bible cover in terms of sales in the United States, and it wasn't for a Bible at all, but a way to disguise your gun. It was mind blowing.
Well, you
to
were
me.
sitting in there as a Christian. You're also sitting there as mayor of a city in which role you have spoken out for gun control. Remember in the 2016 presidential election, that was your issue. You brought mothers whose kids have been killed by guns to New Haven as part of that campaign.
Right.
Where are we on that?
Well, one of the things that, look, we are doing a much better job in New Haven. We're one of the few cities in the United States that has a gun buyback program. We do it in partnership with Yale New Haven Hospital. And we're really grateful to them because I think we've done it twice a year. And then we give these guns to this project that makes the gardening tools. But we still have a ways to go. There's still people that are killed on our streets with guns, with occasionally a stray bullet. A lot less than the other major cities in Connecticut, but until we have no deaths, we've got to continue working on this.
All right, we're going to continue speaking here on Mayor Monday, which you listen to on WNHH FM. Your home for community radio at 103.5 FM, live streamed at newhavenindependent.org. It's Mayor Monday with Mayor Tony Harp. So the big controversy in the Independent today is the Vlock House. And it's a really interesting issue to me. So one of the great programs we have in New Haven, one of the great ways that university interacts with city, is that every year there's a competition at the Yale School of Architecture. That's where you went, right?
Yep.
Okay. But they didn't have that back in your day.
No, I think they were just starting it, but it wasn't as big as it is now, and it certainly wasn't supported by a local, philanthropist.
So what they do is every year, Yale students, they design a house, they build it for someone low income in New Haven to have sort of better housing in the community. There have been complaints sometimes about the house's architecture. So they get ambitious. They're trying to do. You remember this? Your husband, he would your late husband Wendell. He would envision sort of pushing the envelope of design.
Right.
I remember it took me a long time to really come to like the career high school design. It was so different when it started, And that's what these houses do. They look different from the other houses. And sometimes the neighborhoods complain that they look out of shape, out of place, and they don't like that. So last week, the Livable City Initiative voted to allow the city to sell the property for the latest Vlock House on Plymouth Street in the Hill. But they put a condition for the first time. They started putting all sorts of conditions on what materials they can use and what kind of design so that it isn't so out there and it fits in with the community. And this is going to be done. Columbus House is going to get the house. And they didn't tell the Yale School of Architecture this was happening. And it just so happened that their deadline is today to decide the winning design, but all the designs were done before that condition was put in.
Right.
So this is going to come to a head today. And then there were people swinging back from the neighborhoods in the Independent today saying, this is crazy. It's fun and good to have experimentation and form, and we're getting something free and it's stabilizing housing in neighborhoods. And other people say, we have this history with Yale and we don't like to be experimented on, and other people say this is the kind of good form where it's like they're coming and they're building a house first. What do you think?
Well, I think it's important that I've seen all of those houses, and while they may look a little different, they are not out of scale with the neighborhood. They may be slightly different. Oftentimes, the colors integrate with the neighborhood. The design may be a little bit different than design of buildings 100 years ago, but of course you would expect that. And so I'm really confused about who was concerned and
management teams.
But but who on the management teams? I don't know. I guess what I'm a little concerned that they may be overreacting.
Yeah. So were some of other people who were weighing in. So it'll just be interesting.
I spoke to Serena Nielsen Giorgio.
She's the head of LCI, Livable Cities Initiative.
The head of it, and I guess they were concerned. She's going to be on the panel that judges, so I think that she's going to make it all right.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Wow, she does. I mean, you guys, she's one of the people you have in government who kind of quietly make it all right. You know, you need certain people who, like, they don't get their names in the papers, but they kind of make it all right. So you think there will be a solution? Like, I'm wondering
Yeah.
if they could say, maybe we'll start thinking about this more in the future since it was last minute. I don't know. But also, you're making a comment, I think, about design, that we take history into account, but we don't just repeat history.
Right.
We bring new ideas into an ecosystem.
And that design oftentimes changes, and the kinds of improvements that you need to make a building work a little bit better than some of the older buildings that we have, um, that's enhanced by design. And so, as long as it doesn't look totally out of character with the neighborhood and is in relatively the same scale, I think some of these buildings that look a little bit different actually add spice to the neighborhoods. I don't know.
I see what you're saying.
You know?
Yeah, I think one of the interesting ones is on Henry Street. Not on Henry Street, on Henry Street. You know the one I'm thinking between Dixwell and Science Park or the Munson intersection. That does look a lot different. It's faced the other way. You know.
I don't really think I know that one. I was thinking
from years ago. I think before you were mayor. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But I think
I go down that street all the time and I don't notice it. And so if
it's become part of the landscape.
Yeah, if it's that different.
I remember when the townhouses were being built on Temple. And an older gentleman was saying to me, I said, well, you know, it's going to look so different. He says, but you know what? You'll get used to it. And it's kind of nice.
Yeah.
And they are nice. I like the townhouses on Temple Street. They did change the look of that street.
And when you think about it, because we're such an old city, that you've got all kinds of different housing styles on many blocks, particularly in the older part of the city. And, you know, it's what gives us our unique character.
Yeah. And the idea of experimentation. I mean, we don't want to forget history. There's a lot of feeling that we tore down too much of our history in the 50s and 60s. And that, you know, sometimes we throw stuff up without giving enough concern. But I hear what you're saying about change, because, for instance, we've learned stuff about buildings, how to make them more energy efficient, right?
Right.
How to have more people maximize the living space when you're looking for affordable housing. And I think those are two very specific goals of this project, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, absolutely.
Maximizing living space and for affordability, and being able to do solar and other kinds of energy on it.
No, I think that's really important. So as I understand, it'll be a 3-unit building there, and it's expanding access to housing to those who need it the most.
I love this because it's so New Haven. It's why I would rather live in New Haven and be a journalist in New Haven than anywhere else in the world, because it's so interesting. There are interesting points on both sides, and it's great we have a university that is part of the mix, and then that raises questions about how university interact. You got all these people from the mayor to the university to neighborhood who have real opinions about design.
Right.
I mean, that's interesting.
I think it's interesting, and I think that it creates a tension that maybe can ultimately have something that's better than currently exists, but not so far out.
There's no other way to move society forward than that tension.
No, I think it is. It's what moves us forward.
Yeah. Speaking of throwing up buildings, so your building department publicly expressed concern that one of the new buildings in town is being put up too fast. Yeah. And with a little bit too, it's not cheaply the wrong kind of materials. And I also had a conversation with the fire chief, and that's Audubon Square, which is a great project. It's a long, just mostly vacant super block created by super, meaning they put little streets together to try to have big development in the 60s. And it's mostly been parking lots and no public subsidy. They're just building hundreds of apartments, and they're getting stores. And it's going up fast. The Spinnaker project, it's that bordered by Audubon State, Orange, and Grove.
Mm-hmm.
But while it's been going up fast, they've been failing a lot of inspections, like a lot more than usual. And last week, someone could have died. It's one of those stories that you hold your breath because, and it wasn't the biggest wind we've had, but the wind was blowing hard last week, one day afternoon. Mm-hmm. And a big chunk of wall fell to the ground on Audubon Street, and it missed by 10 feet a security guard. Luckily, the construction crew had gone home, and for some reason, there weren't other pedestrians. Someone could have died. Mm-hmm. And in the wake of that, your building department has instituted a new rule that they first used with 360 State Street Tower when that went up. They were initially failing inspections. They said, look, we're going to do a different process here. Usually, every little part of a project, when you build something, you call us when you're ready to get approval to do something new. We're just going to come once a week, and we're coming in force. We're going to do 3 kinds of inspections, like plumbing, electrical, mechanical, and the third one. the electrical, plumbing, mechanical, and sorry, I forget the third kind, but any kind. They're going to do them all at once a week, so you know we're coming. And if something's not working, you're going to have to wait a whole week, and we're coming back, and you have to get it right by then.
Mm-hmm.
Slow it down a little bit, be a little more careful, know about the oversight. And they said that got rid of the problem at 360 State. What's your sense of this thing in the wake of last week's?
Well, how can you not worry about public safety? And so I trust Jim Tercio. He knows what he's doing. It's important that we make sure that the public's safe, that the people who work on the jobs are safe, and that ultimately we have a decent building that people will inhabit that is safe. And so I trust their judgment. I know they're doing the right thing on behalf of safety.
Our lives would have been so different the last week if someone had been killed.
That would have been
that would have been a huge story if what that could have been.
Mm-hmm.
Thank God that didn't happen. Thank God we got a chance to prevent it from happening.
Absolutely.
And the other concern Fire Chief Alston gave to me wasn't really about this project. He says there's a trend in general with construction, especially in the Northeast, of buildings being built with it looks the same on the outside. He said this building's going to look the same as other New Havens, all sturdy, but that there's a lighter weight construction used that lets air rise faster where they're connected, so that in a fire, whereas he said an older building like the one we're in now, you might have 20 minutes to fight a fire before you have to pull the firefighters out. It might be 8 minutes there. You know anything about that?
Well, no, I have heard that he's concerned about that, and I know that they are using new building materials that have been approved.
Yeah, they're legal. Yeah.
They're legal, and so the real question is, did they ask those who are fire experts whether or not we would have those kinds of problems? And probably not. And I'm hoping that that there are precautions inside those buildings that will assure that people are safe. Again, that's the most important thing.
Editorial judgment here. I think it's one of those good problems to have. We're building a lot in New Haven. A lot of things. We've got a whole new era, whether it's the Titus project to this one to many others. The city's changing block by block, and it's kind of an interesting time.
And the interesting thing about it to me is that we're not often tearing down old things and building new. That we're really building on old parking lots. And it happens right at the time that the car becomes less significant as a form of transportation. So,
sweet, yeah.
Yeah.
That kind of gives a good time. It's the opposite of when we last did this in the 50s and 60s when everyone was gearing around the car, and that proved to be, we wouldn't have known at the time. We thought we needed to buy into that.
Right.
It turned out to be our downfall, trying to compete with the suburbs as in and out.
Right.
All right. The preferred consensus now. People who think about cities and new urbanism. Jackie James, I was talking to her this morning. She's come back to City Hall. She had worked as a small business director, left years ago, and she won a competition for a contract that I guess your office put out to help the registrar of voters avoid election mistakes in coming elections.
Right. It's actually the registrar of voters that actually put it out.
So that wasn't your office. I know you don't oversee registrar of voters. It's a separate part of
Well, I think
government.
we're paying for it. I told them that we needed to work on this, but they did all of the mock-up in terms of what was necessary to look for in a consultant, and we're going to pay for it because we don't want people to we don't want the experience at the polls to be something that keeps people away from the polls.
Right. And I think there was an overwhelming consensus in New Haven. We need to do something to make the elections work more smoothly. So how much is that, $20,000?
I really don't know. We just said that whatever it was, we would pay for it.
Okay. And so hopefully, I know New Haven is determined to make sure that the elections work better.
Right.
Okay, and then a second person I was going to ask you about that was Nicole Jefferson. She also left, and there's been a long-running battle for her to get her job back. Not the first time someone who's been terminated has filed complaints about it. Goes back to many mayors. So you lost the round of court last week. You guys had appealed a labor board decision that said that she should be reinstated with back pay. What happens next? Does she come back, or are you guys going to challenge that?
Well, one of the things that we're going to do is to meet with our corp counsel, with our labor department, and make a decision about where we go. I know that we looked at the decision that the judge made. It seemed to be in conflict with itself, and so after having looked at that with a number of people, and after having thought about it, we'll make a decision about what we do.
So, in what ways was it a conflict with this, though?
Well, like it was as I recall, and it was uh, terminology about whether or not from a and in many respects whether or not something was egregious or not. And so um, since it is a personnel issue, we probably won't be talking about it, but we'll be thinking about whether or not we move forward.
And when do you think that decision will be made?
Sometime this week.
All right. And I know that's just been one of those controversies that have kept going. At some point, everyone will be happy when that's over.
Yes, I will be a part of the everyone that will be happy, trust me.
As will they. And you're listening to Mayor Monday at 103.5 FM. Demetrius Anderson is waiting for a decision. Have you been following his case? Tom Breen originally wrote about this gentleman who works for the city in Parks Department.
Mm-hmm.
And 13 years ago, he was let out of jail. He'd done identity fraud. And he got caught on both state and federal charges down in Philly. So he finished the state sentence, and he was supposed to do 13 more months in a federal penitentiary, but marshals never came to bring him there. They forgot. They had a glitch. And he's just, said, okay, I guess I'm free. And he built a great new life in New Haven. He's worked well for the city, has a second job, bought a condo in his church. And then the marshals said 13 years later, oops, we just found our mistake. We got to bring you back. And it's not that they wanted to. They said under law, that's our job. So after the Independent wrote about it, he was on CNN. And the prosecutors down there said, we don't feel he needs to go back to jail or be on probation anymore. He served his time. He served many years in prison. And now a federal judge has to rule. So he's not all out of the woods yet. He's not going to go back to prison, but he might have to be on probation. So that's where the case stands now.
Now, it just shows you how ridiculous our system is, doesn't it? I mean, here this man has lived a peaceful, contributing member of our community life for 13 years. And now he might have to go back on probation.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a little silly.
But we're glad he doesn't have to go back behind bars. That was a nightmare.
Well, that's even worse.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot to bring up another fun, only in New Haven, neighborhood dispute over buildings. So Howe Street, lots happening on Howe Street in that one block. So here, to your point, there's a vacant lot. It's been a vacant lot for a long time, a parking lot next to 100 Howe. And a developer has come in, no aid needed. He's going to build between 60 and 75 apartments there. So that has usual debates. Some people don't like. I find there's a contradiction for people who say, I don't want my taxes to go up. I want more housing. And then they're upset. Then they're opposed to density.
Right.
So, but that's not the big debate. The big debate is across the street, two houses, 95 and 97 Howe. I once briefly lived in this other one during college when it was near Mamoons at 2 a.m, which was a great college experience. But
I think they're in my backyard from where I used to live.
That's right, from Linwood, right? You know that house? And those two houses are called historic.
Mm-hmm.
I always think that's an overused phrase, but that makes me a Philistine, I know. And one of them is kind of, the other isn't. But in any case, they've really been run down over the years. They're still occupiable.
Mm-hmm.
But they were bought by two very good developers in town. One of the ones you never have the problems with, the Feldman brothers.
Mm-hmm.
They don't always able to get the money right away to do some project like Harold's, but they've done a lot of just solid housing around town. And they bought those houses, and they went to a management team meeting, said, we're going to tear down one smaller house, and we're going to build 30 apartments.
Right.
But then it turned out, Tom Breen went and looked at the plans. He's tearing down both of them, including the bigger one. And the Preservation Trust agrees with them. Preservation Trust said, that building's shot. We like some of those details, but you can't save it. You gotta tear it down. The neighborhood doesn't feel that way, and there are preservations in the neighborhood. They know they're a great part of New Haven, so they watch every change. Olivia Martson is a preservation, lives a block away, and she says, we want to save that building. We want adaptive reuse. If people can still live in it, that means it's savable. Any thoughts on that?
Well, usually the Preservation Trust is pretty conservative, and so I would trust their judgment. It's a beautiful old building. And it probably could be saved if you wanted to invest a lot of resources into it. But when you have a developer that is investing their own resource and there's no subsidy from the state or federal or local government, and the Preservation Trust that is conservative says that it really needs, it's beyond repair without substantial work, it's beautiful from a bones point of view, but it may be on repair. And so uh, I guess I would settle with Preservation Trust.
I guess, and I mean this sincerely. I think you know a lot more about architecture than I do, because I look at that building and I say it's fine. I don't think beautiful. Like around the corner, they did that very unusual, only in New Haven thing, where they got the developer Randy Salvatore on Chapel to actually lift up and move an indeed beautiful, beautiful old house. Even I
Mm-hmm.
can tell it was beautiful. I've been inside it. They moved it down the block to save it, so there's little. Now it looks little. They used to look little in the shadow of the novella on Chapel. I'm not feeling it with this house. I used to live in that house. I'm just not feeling, I'm not
I
feeling it.
know you can even look from the outside. Like it's seen better days.
Yeah.
you know?
The other thing is, and I think there's an honest two-way debate about the character of a neighborhood. So House Street is different from Dwight one block away.
Right.
So at what phase do you have that progression where we're getting to be a denser city? There's a real demand for housing. We know by the huge profits people made flipping apartment buildings on that block. We talked about
Mm-hmm.
that a few blocks away, a few weeks ago. The in some ways, are we going to embrace new urbanism when it means a lot of density? Because people say we want to, because the same people, preservationists, who supported the changes made to the novella when it was built, and that was an example of a developer working well with the neighborhood. They're all for you don't need as many cars. We could have more people in there.
Mm-hmm.
But I wonder sometimes, but then they're worried it's going to look less like Dwight Street. And maybe it's okay for House Street to look less like Dwight Street.
Well, it never looked like the White Street.
Yeah, yeah.
And it never looked like Linwood Place. And so as long as you continue to have Dwight Street and Linwood Place and um, the other streets in that neighborhood that really sort of keep the character of the older character of our city.
I'm
then
going above my pay
think
grade
we're
here
fine.
now. I think one way House Street was always different was that it was wider and a lot of commerce is mixed in with it. So there are a lot of places to eat there. There's Mia, there's the Indian restaurant, just on a block away, the Mamoons. You got the art gallery above the pizza place. You got the Moroccan restaurant. I mean,
And
isn't
you
that
have
more urban where you have more density of people living, supporting those kind of businesses? And then on Linwood and Dwight in either direction, the other side is much more residential.
Yeah, I think that it's that. I
Quieter.
also think that, like you already had a number of apartments that were like very dense apartments. So where they're building the new apartment, there were already apartments of about 100, at least two different buildings that had about 100 apartments already in there.
Yeah.
So it's that were built, I would say, like not at the same time in the 1800s, but maybe 1930, 1940. And so, you already have a mix that is very different. Whereas on Dwight Street and Linwood Place, most of the houses are of a similar character, and you don't have big apartment buildings like you do
We
on.
do have medium size, and it's very nice the way it fits in.
Right.
That
Wow.
great renovation, they just did with Chabad House on Linwood.
Oh, okay.
It's beautiful. I was
Very nice.
inside it.
Yeah.
Yeah, millions they got into that building. It's kept the same scale. That street is kept the same, and it's a quieter residential street, but still feels kind of urban.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess in all these discussions we're having about these properties, it's really about what kind of change do we want, what kind of pace, and what should it look like. And I think
And-
it's so great how much people care on all sides of that. I love how much New Haven thinks about its history, and whether or not you agree with either side on the debate, I love the stake they have in it.
Well, I think that's the thing
buy
about
that.
New Haven is that we have a lot of people that think and they have opinions and
And they
they're not
care.
always the same and they care and they care for their point of view and they're going to fight for it.
And then the most fun job to have is mayor of New Haven, which we're talking about our mayor on Monday. See, the journalist part is fun because they're all yelling at each other and throwing things, and then we follow up and write about it, And then you get to stand there and deflect the whole thing with Mayor Tony Harp on 103.5 FM live streamed at newhaveninvent.org. And another thing they're debating about is bus stops on the green. So you have an overdose committee. I guess that's overdose is in the name. Committee's not in the name. Council or something. We went to the first one of those. We've been to. Markeisha Ricks went last week. They had a very interesting debate about bus stops on the green, which is continued in the pages of The Independent, about whether moving the central bus stop connections on the green would have a desired impact on the overdose problem on the green.
Well, I think the issue isn't so much the bus stops, but the transfer stations. We have 11 on the green. It's a lot if
Mhm.
you think about it. and almost every one of the buses all throughout the alphabet that come into New Haven have to come to the green for people to transfer. And I think that's the real issue. The question that the Move New Haven study is looking at is there, should we have more than one transfer station? And should the main stops on the green be on Chapel Street or Elm Street? And so those things are being thought about outside of whether or not they contribute to substance use on the green and to the things that happened in August with the overdoses.
Although you've talked about how because we have an outdated hub and spoke system, people come from all over the state for treatment get dropped to the green, whether or not their center is near the green.
Absolutely, and there might be a closer place for them to make a connection to where they're actually going. Again, like this study's been going on for the past couple of years. It's not completed yet. So
my favorite part about the study was $1 million 4 years. At the end, they said we rode the buses, and everything you told us 4 years ago is true. the routes are outdated, and we got to change that and the hours they run. It took 4 years to get that. We have a new governor. Is anything going to happen with that study?
Well, we hope that something will happen with the study, and I know that they are actually expanding the study somewhat. So we're hoping that by the end of this year, the study will be completed.
I mean, we remember you had 5 people working for you in the city, including that guy does all the apps now. They could have done those routes in 2 weeks.
Well, I know, but
it's not that hard. I mean, everyone kind of agrees.
Yeah, and one of the yes, but there's an intersection between the city of New Haven and Connecticut Transit. And as you know, Connecticut Transit is operated by the state of Connecticut. And the state of Connecticut and its transit has put most of the resources, and it will take resources to make changes down here. They've gone to fast track up near in the Hartford area. And so that has been a problem. On Friday, we met with the new commissioner of Department of Transportation. We went up to Newington.
I've been interested in him because he ran Metro North at one point.
He did.
So what's your read?
He's very interested in being the commissioner of all of transportation, not just the trains. And he recognizes, I think, more so than many, that economic development and transportation go hand in hand, and that he's looking to make sure that there's a closer relationship than has existed in the past.
Won't be hard.
Okay. He's very interested in moving forward with our transportation study and coming to some resolution. We did have that conversation.
So what specific were you asking him to do? To follow through on the MOVE study?
We wanted him to follow through on the MOVE study. We talked about that. We talked about the development of Long Wharf and the train area there, and the fact that it's all at sea level, and that we've got to work together with the Army Corps of Engineers to resolve some of the problems.
Make sure it doesn't flood.
To make sure it doesn't flood, and to make sure that we make the site attractive for developers that want to come in and build. They're going to want to know that as the sea level rises, that their investment is not going to be eroded.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
We talked about Tweed, and we talked about some about how you get some of the traffic off of 91 and 95. So we had those conversations, and
how'd they end up?
He wants to work with us. We talked a little bit about tolls.
That was a pretty easy one, right?
Yeah.
You're both for him.
Yeah, we're for him.
Yeah.
Do you want to have a public hearing? You can have it here in New Haven.
The one place where you might not get killed.
Yeah.
So what do you think is your gut that he gets buses? Because buses have been the stepchild, except for Hartford area with the fast track, as you mentioned.
I think he does get buses, and I think that he's going to do something about buses. He gets that there needs to be a connection to the Springfield line, or the Hartford to Springfield line, and buses. and that if we're going to do anything with Tweed, that there's got to be a connection between rail, buses, and Tweed.
Oh,
So
that's really interesting.
yeah, I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
And he's got a very easy disposition, and he's willing to listen, and I think work with local municipalities and government. So, and he's from New Haven, you know. So
I didn't know
was,
that.
Oh yeah, he grew up over at City Point, and he's got relatives who still live over there, so he knows the city well.
That's good. I didn't
He went
know
to
that.
Notre Dame High School. You know?
Right. Same time as DeStefano? Or?
I don't know.
Okay.
You might have been there with Marty Looney. You know?
A lot of people went to that school. The town of Hamden, I always feel like has some of the issues we do. Sometimes a little before us, sometimes a little bit after us. After us office tends to be policing issues. So they have an issue now. Do they want a civilian review board? That argument we just had for years. And I always have my bias, which is that just make the police commission that already has subpoena power do the work rather than create something new. And I was thinking about that during the debate because a point you brought up throughout, tell me if I'm accurately doing your position, that you didn't push a certain plan for CRB. You said you want to see what the community wants.
Right.
But one concern you kept bringing up was practical. Will people show up at meetings? They didn't used to get quorums. Right. So in the last weeks, we're hearing from the management team, we have a new law for new CRB, and the management team is supposed to give you recommendations of whom to appoint. The deadline's coming, less than a month, and most of them haven't even really begun. They don't have anybody. Any thoughts? I just handed you a softball.
Well, you know, I think that one of the things that's happening, I'm sending Esther Armand out to the management teams.
That's where we saw
and so she's trying to get them ready to make their proposed, to send me proposals. And then, of course, the group that has been advocating for the CRB has been very active in that space, too.
But how about this fundamental issue of how are we going to get people to sign up and then spend those long hours with the tedious work? How are we going to get a quorum?
Well, I think that there are people who come to the management teams and may not have a leadership position there, but they're people that are used to coming to meetings, and I'm hoping those are the kind of people that they will recommend to me for appointment.
Are they going to recommend you people? Isn't that the issue?
I think they will, yes. I've already gotten some recommendations, so
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's it. The other issue Hamden's done is, and this is a national problem for all cities and towns, which is recycling. Mm-hmm. So until recently, we all went big on recycling since the 80s, and we made it work. And we collected our recycling. We got people to start doing the blue toters, right? Many of us recycle most of our garbage now. The city picks it up single stream. We were sending it until recently to China. Then China stopped taking it. Right. Said too many errors in it. So we found some other countries, but they had limited capacity. And now it's gotten to the point where in some places, it's costing municipalities to do the recycling. So in some parts of the country now, the towns or cities are collecting the recycling and then just throwing it in the landfill like the rest of the trash because they can't afford to recycle it. Hamden isn't at that point yet. But Mayor Lang was in last week and he said, we're no longer at the point where we can do it for free because some contractor can come and make money. But we're still at the point where it costs less than if we throw it in the landfill. So they're doing something new where they're going to start putting a fourth bag out on the sidewalk. You're going to get pink bags to put your textiles. And Somerville's done this. Some other Manchester, Connecticut. There's a company that does this. So in Hamden, you're going to have to learn to do your blue bin, your green bin, but you're going to take out your old blankets and clothes and stuff, and that gets taken up to be reused so that the garbage is purer so you can't sell it. Purer meaning. And the fourth thing is glass. Apparently that if you break glass that you put in your bin, or if the garbage crew breaks the bottle when they put it in the truck, the entire batch is considered spoiled.
That's interesting.
So they're even going to do they're looking at a separate glass thing. It's going to be really complicated to recycle. Well, how's New Haven doing amid this recycling concern that's sweeping the nation?
Well, one of the things that we're just back to basics. We've discovered that sometimes people don't know what to put in the blue bin. So we developed stickers last year.
Yep.
So.
Honda Smith put them on all our, and I learned that I always thought that you could put the plastic top to beverage bottle in there, and you can't.
Yeah. So it's, as it stands now, even in New Haven, it's complicated.
Yeah.
And so to make it more complicated, I think is something to worry about. I know that Hampton is doing something with plastic bags. We have a committee that's looking at that.
Right. Do this, not have that here, which is a really complicated issue too.
Yeah.
Joe Biden, I've been dying to ask you this. What do you think?
I think he's, you know what? I think that a lot of people, particularly here in New Haven, where people seem to give hugs and do all.
I'm a big hugger. I've been on watch since then. Yeah.
And I think it's cultural. It's like some people are huggers, and some places they do a whole lot more hugging. People have said to me who've come from elsewhere that they've had to get used to the way in which people hug in New Haven. So I think we'd all be in trouble.
What do you think about his campaign? Should he run?
I think he should still run. I mean, for crying out loud, look at what they've allowed to happen with Mr. Trump.
But if that's crying out loud, no one else can get away. I mean, Donald Trump did stuff involving women, whether it's illegal use of campaign funds to pay off a porn star or the Billy Bush tape. That would end the career of any other politician. So it's weird. I don't even know what the rule is.
So, and so like people hug here in New Haven, and this didn't come up when he was vice president, interestingly.
Times have changed. Times have changed.
Somewhat. But you know what? Honestly,
except for Donald Trump.
Yeah, except for some people. Why does he get a pass on this when he's done horrible things?
When you figure this out, you will have the political science insight of the country.
So I think he should still run, from my perspective.
And Mayor Pete is getting a lot of attention. He's saying that the experience of running a city just a bit smaller than New Haven is the best experience for running the country. And he's inspired people with the way he talks. Smart guy.
He's a real smart guy. I've met him. He's very smart, and I think the fact that he's just a very smart man and understands systems is more important than he ran a small city.
And do you have anyone yet, or I always ask you that?
Yeah. I don't have anybody yet. I'm still thinking on it.
You got some stuff going on. You threw out the first ball for the Wilbercross baseball team, first pitch. Right?
I did. Yeah.
How did you do? How'd you?
I got to work on my my pitch a little bit.
Was it a knuckleball or a fastball?
It was kind of like a fastball that ended up slow.
Oh, Bob sent in a question. He said, "Will any schools close?" Because we found out the Obama school closing didn't make sense. We would lose. I'm not Obama school closing. The West Rock. The idea of closing West Rock School, combining it in the new modern Obama school is going to cost us more than if we didn't close it because of the magnet funds we'd lose.
Yeah, I right now, my sense of the Board of Education is that there won't be any schools that close, but there may be, Riverside may have to move.
Okay, but not close.
Oh,
that's interesting. You got a clean and safe walk, May 1st and 2nd. You wanted to let people know. What is that?
Oh yeah. We're going to. Oh, that's right. May 1st. We've gotten all of our department heads.
That thing.
Yes.
The sweeps. You don't want to call sweeps.
Clean and safe is now sweeps.
Okay. So the next neighborhood to get all your code inspectors and public safety people into one place at once to do a walk through to solve problems to get things cleaned out is going to be Dwight.
It's going to be Dwight.
Excellent. And you have an AIDS walk on the 13th.
Right, and it starts at the New Haven Green. Come down at 10 o'clock.
All right. And then Cross Senior Thea Ranelli got a package from Amazon at Wilbercross High School last week. She opened the box, and there was a $40,000 scholarship to study computer science at any school of her choice to try to promote women in tech.
That's fantastic.
And someone who was sitting in your chair, my most fun guest last week in the second half was Nicholas McGee. He lives on a sailboat in City Point, young man.
Oh, okay.
Because he has college loans, and he likes nature. He also likes Mars. He sits on his boat and he looks up at the sky.
Mm-hmm.
And he put together a team at Make Haven that just won a NASA competition. They designed and printed out an incubator where 4 astronauts could live for a year on Mars from Mars-made materials.
Oh.
And study the planet.
Oh, that's interesting.
They won $32,000, and now they're going to try to continue it because the work he thinks could actually lead to an actual incubator that gets used, as well as strong walls designed for the lower pressure Mars that can actually have applications to construction in America. What about Square? Everything comes around to Mars and New Haven. That's New Haven.
We're going to have a budget workshop tonight. It's going to be at Career High School at 6 o'clock. So anybody that wants to learn about the budget, has concerns about the budget, wants to express them to the Board of Alders, can do that.
I have a prediction that will probably be wrong, because journalist predictions are always wrong. Taxes aren't being raised, so no one's going to show up. Poor people. Gary Doyans will give a list of all the ways he thinks you can save money, and you'll be out of there pretty early. Oh, but then the department heads present, so that takes a while.
Takes a bit of time, yeah. But hopefully if people have concerns or they just want to learn about it, come on down.
Because in New Haven, people do have opinions.
They do.
And we don't want it any other way, although we like them to be expressed in a civil way.
Yes.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Mayor Hart, for joining us again today. Great way to start the week. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. Thanks for Gateway Community College, Bertram Moses PC, providing financial support for today's program. Thanks to the amazing Harry Dross, the man who does the magic.
All right.
And beams us on so many platforms that we're never going to learn all the places they're listening to the show and watching it.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Harry.
We're going to just trust Harry that it's in the safe places.
Yeah.
We're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience performing I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free from the group CD, A Plea for Peace. This is Paul Bass inviting you to fly free with us all day and all night long here at WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.